good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome. Whichever part of the world and whatever time zone you are in, thank you for joining us for the 2021 edition of the Black Consciousness Festival. This year, we are inviting you to shift. Join with amazing people across the world as we explore the many ways we, as people of African descent, grow, cultivate, produce, share, and rebirth ourselves. Through our ancestral knowledge, historical legacy, pride, power, and practice, let's celebrate the individual and collective ways we navigate through life. Together, we continue to walk in pride, power, and practice. Enjoy the session.
Welcome. My name is Erica Ashton, and I'm the Festival Director for the Black Consciousness Festival. And it's my pleasure to introduce another of our amazing conversations, Movement of Jah People, African-Diasporic Connections. And leading this conversation today is our board member, one of our board members of the festival, Ms. Ival Grant Williams. Ival is a public finance professional with 20 years experience in New York City and state government. She's currently on the leadership team of the largest public retirement system, serving New York City public school and university educators. Ival is an advocate for women and children, a mentor for girls, and a volunteer doula. Ival, welcome. Good to see you. Have a beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much, Erica. Such a pleasure to see you.
Yes. Take care. Enjoy.
Okay. Wonderful. Oh, it's so exciting to be here today. I feel like I'm in the presence of celebrities to be here having this conversation with Zoe Smith and with Kevoy Burton. Zoe is an amazing woman. She's London-born, British-Grenadian, currently residing in the Caribbean Spice Isle, Grenada. Hi, Zoe. How are you?
I'm good. I'm honored to be in your presence too. It's going to be a great conversation.
Thank you, sis. Thank you. I'm also excited to have the other celebrity in our presence, Kevoy Burton. And we know that Kevoy is a Jamaican-born, I guess we'll call him an international actor. He's a television personality. And Kevoy switched or shifted from Jamaica to Ghana last year in March of 2020. So it's a pleasure, very much a pleasure to have Kevoy with us as well. And once he joins, we'll wave at him. Kevoy!
Hey, I went and I troubled what never needed to be troubled, and then it got cut off.
It happens. So welcome to you both. Again, it's a pleasure to be in your presence. I feel like I am with celebrities. I admire you, both of you, so much for doing something that I've thought about doing, that my friends and I, family, we've talked about doing, but we never actually did it. But the two of you really took a leap of faith, and there was a major shift in your life, and you changed your geographic location and your residency, right? So to move from London to Grenada, and then to move from Jamaica to Ghana, I can only imagine the amazing transition that you had. So we're really looking forward to hearing from you this afternoon about that experience. But first, maybe Zoe, if you could just talk a little bit about who you are, and then Kevoy, you'll do the same after Zoe, and then we'll jump into to talking a little bit more about your shift.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Zoe Smith, born in London to two Grenadian parents. And as a kid, I wasn't particularly interested in my Caribbean heritage. In fact, I wasn't raised in a particularly Grenadian or West Indian way. And it wasn't until later life, when I was at university doing my master's, studying international development, and I was specializing in African government and politics. And I came back to Grenada and I was like, hang on a minute. I mean, obviously I'm of African heritage and incredibly proud of that, but there are so many needs in the Caribbean itself and in Grenada specifically. Like, a lot of people don't even know where it is. So I kind of felt a responsibility to be somewhere where I could make a difference. And it's not totally like selfless. It's great being here compared to being in the UK, where I would be freezing cold, my central heating would be on, I'll be dealing with so much nonsense. Yeah, it's great. And I just basically documented what it's like to move back. So conversations with other people who've moved from the US or Canada or the UK to the Caribbean, just sort of explaining that you don't necessarily have to wait until you're retired to do it. You can do it when you're a bit younger, and just to kind of shift the narrative on what it means to relocate, to be I was going to say an expat, but no, a return immigrant to your island of birth or heritage.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Kevoy, who are you?
Well, I'm Kevoy. I'm an actor, a marketer who was purely Jamaican. I was born and raised in Jamaica. I lived in Jamaica for all of my years until I decided to move to Ghana. I was in Jamaica at the height of my career, and at 27, I felt like I wanted to do something different. But I didn't want to go to US, UK, Canada. I don't like the idea of those places because of the uphill battle that I would have to face. So I decided, what I do now can change the generation for the future, and I wanted my generation to be born in Africa.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you both were very intentional about the shift that you made, right? And it's a shift in space, from going from not just one city to another city, or one state to another state, or one country to another country, but from one continent to another, right? So maybe talk a little bit about what motivated that shift. I know, Kevoy, you just mentioned that you wanted the future generation to be born on the continent of Africa, right? So maybe talk a little bit more about that, or whatever it is that motivated you to move from Jamaica to Ghana.
Okay, so maybe about 4 years ago, I was having a conversation with my grandmother, right? And this was probably the first time she was being very open with me, and she told me that when she was about 12 years old, she got a scholarship to go to high school. And because of a bastard law that existed in Jamaica in the 60s, she couldn't have gone to school. Or in the 50s, I think. She couldn't have gone to school. And she got a scholarship the next year again. And she still didn't get the chance to go to school. And so what happened is that she didn't go to any more school. But it resulted in about, maybe, I'm not putting blame on grandma, but it resulted in about 2 to 3 generations of poverty. And for me, when I assess that, and I realize that, okay, one single decision can change everything for the future, I decided I was going to be a lot more responsible for whomever is coming after me. I mean, I already have 2 children, but I mean, it's not too late. I'm not 30 yet, so I think I have time. If I fail, then I fail. But if I win, then I win big.
Thank you. And Zoe, what about you? What motivated your shift from London to Grenada?
I think similarly, having children definitely made me want to do things differently for them. I think having grown up in the UK in the 80s, for my parents who moved to Grenada, to England, when they were maybe 8 or 9, their hopes and dreams of what their offspring could achieve in the UK were very big, and in some ways I did. But understanding the cost that came at, seeing that things hadn't really changed for my children, like my eldest is 11, and seeing him in school going through similar sorts of nonsense that I had to deal with in the 80s, I was like, okay, he might end up being a judge, he might end up being, I don't know, a scientist, but if he's going to have issues about his identity and not really know who he is it worth it? And I think just being able to use the privilege that I've had growing up elsewhere, and to bring that back to the Caribbean to show a better example for my kids, but also to just live free. Like, I'm not nearly 30. I'm over 30. And I think I've reached a point in life where I want freedom. I just want to be. And I find, I mean, the Caribbean isn't perfect. No island is perfect. There's things you have to navigate. But I just think being in nature, being surrounded by people who look like you, who encourage you, who nurture you, absolutely matters to me. And for me, it was easiest to do that in Grenada. In 10 years' time, once I'm done with kids, who knows, I might move on to Gambia or Ghana. But for now, this is home. And I really feel like I want my children to be connected to their roots, because it can so easily be lost. It can so easily be lost. So I think kids, the next generation, absolutely played a part in my decision to move back here.
Yes, yes. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, I guess, maybe pros and cons about your shift. What would you say are, or just maybe pick one or even more than one, but what's the biggest lesson that you learned, or the biggest pro about your shift? Maybe starting with you, Zoe?
Does Kevoy want to go first? I'm going to think about it.
Keep on thinking.
I think one of the biggest pro for me is really understanding that culture teaches you that there is nothing that's right or wrong. It's just different. So, you know, when you there are certain things here that the people would go crazy over. They cringe, or they banish. And in Jamaica, it's okay. It's really okay. You know what I mean? And you know, it's the same. It's the same in Jamaica and over here. But to be frank, I mean, that's one of the things that have made me appreciate people a lot more, actually. Because when you come here, a lot of people become frustrated, because then the people are very different. The society is very different, especially if you're from a fast-paced society. When you come here, it's a lot more relaxed, and the people are not in a hurry to do anything. So, you know, you become frustrated because you're used to processes and you're used to structure and you're used to this thing. But it doesn't happen like that here. It's different. It's very, very different. And it teaches you patience. It teaches you understanding. It teaches you a lot of different things. So for me, I think I got a lot of pros from the society, actually.
Yeah, and I could appreciate that, because I remember being in a conversation with someone. We were in a workshop and we were talking about Blackness, right? And she turned and she said, "You know what? You know, when people say, oh, folks of color are always late," she said, "No, don't accept that." She said, "There's something, we are connected to the earth in such a way that there is an organic way that we move through the spaces that we occupy." So she said, "It's not about being late, it's about actually being on time to receive whatever is waiting for you, and to receive it at the right time," right? So when you talk about that pace and the slowness of pace, it's not that there's a lack of structure, but there's just more room to just be, you know? And Zoe, I heard earlier talk about just being free, right? And in that freedom comes marching, I guess, going with the flow of life, you know?
I have subscribed to this type of living.
Yeah. It's an adjustment though, because a lot of what you said, I feel in Grenada. And in some ways, being in Grenada is a meditation on my impatience. Like being British, I'm like, if you say 3 days, it's going to take 3 days. How dare it take 7? And then I start sweating and melting, and I have no choice to be like, okay, whatever, get over it. Is it really that important? And I think also meetings, I'll go to a meeting to discuss something, and we'll spend 70% of the time just chatting. And the British person, he's like, come on, we need to be efficient, we need to get this done. But actually, we're human beings. That relationship is important. And why not focus on building those relationships, of having an authentic understanding of people, rather than just being so like results focused and forgetting about the humanity of it. So it's good. And I think also for me, I think another positive, another pro is being on an island that's just so tiny. There are like 110,000 people in Grenada, which is smaller than the smallest suburb in London. Like, it's tiny. And I think being in a space where you can affect change and see the results and see the tangible difference that it makes in people's lives is very different compared to being in the UK, for example, where the system just seems so big that what can one person do? Whereas a group of like-minded, positive-minded people in a small setting, like here, you really can make a difference.
Yes, 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 yes. Listening to the two of you makes me think about, I guess, some of the assumptions that people make, about living abroad or moving to a different space, different country, different continent. Folks are like, oh, you're going to feel like an outsider. Your previous life is going to seem so distant. You're going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be like this intense emotional roller coaster that you're going to be on. You're going to have trouble fitting in. You're going to be worrying about your finances, right? These are all of the I guess, assumptions, again, that people are making about what it would be like to live in a different continent or a different country. So can you either, I guess, affirm or dispel any of those assumptions?
I think a lot of that's true, but that's okay. It's good to be uncomfortable sometimes. I mean, for me, I've lived abroad before. I've lived in Italy, I've lived in Spain, and I spent a lot of time in France. So at least here I don't have the language barrier. But I think in one lifetime we can live so many lives, and to think that the life that we started off is a life that we have to die with, I think I personally find that quite limiting, and I can understand why some people are like, to rebuild from scratch, it's too much. But I think what you gain from going through that process, you lose the stuff that you didn't really need to have, and you gain the stuff in the areas that you need to grow in. So absolutely, without planning, it can be challenging financially. It can definitely be uncomfortable. For me personally, I often feel like I don't fit in, but I felt like I didn't fit in the UK. Like, I think I'm just personally comfortable with being an outsider. And that's part of having a dual identity. I'm not fully British. I'm not fully Grenadian. I'm like in limbo, and I learned how to be okay with that personally.
Okay, thank you. Kevoy? You might be on mute, Kevoy. Kevoy, I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay.
All right. So when you guys speak, I'm hearing a lot of frying. So I have a little problem with sound. So when you guys are talking, I can't hear it properly. I have to put my ears to the.
Yes, it's okay. We're making it work.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Ask me the question one more time.
Sure. We were just talking about some of the assumptions that folks make about the hardship of moving from one place to the other. So whether it's about worrying about finances, feeling like you don't fit in, feeling uncomfortable, lonely, feeling like an outsider. So can you either agree or dispel any of those assumptions based on your experience?
Gotcha. Yeah, sure. I think I agree with what Zoe said. It takes proper planning. If you don't have planning, then it doesn't make any sense. Also, you need a mentality shift, because you have to realize that where you're going is not the same society that you grew up in, and they do not have the same practices that you are used to. So you have to be prepared mentally to take on these new attitudes, so to speak, and you have to be prepared for these things. It's not just finances that you have to prepare. You have to prepare your mind. You have to prepare your finances. You have to prepare to work. It's a society. It is hard, but it's hard everywhere. It's just your attitude towards the hardship that really sets you apart. So when you hear somebody say, "Oh, it's hard," it's because they don't have they might not have the fight to fight. You understand? Yeah.
Yes.
So there's hardship. I won't lie and say, "Oh, it's all prosperity over here." There's hardship, but wherever there's hardship, there's opportunity.
Absolutely. I think there's an assumption also that folks make that, as a Black person, or as a Black woman, if I'm moving to the African continent that, everyone looks like me, so it's going to be easy. I'm not going to have to deal with some of the challenges that I deal with here in New York, in Brooklyn, where I live. That it's just different because it's Africa. It's not the United States. It's an assumption that we make, that if we move to another continent where folks look like us, right? Move back to the Caribbean. Oh, it's going to be much easier there because everyone is of Caribbean descent. Everyone. So let's talk a little bit about that.
I think to a certain, I don't know how to explain it, how to put it into words, but there is a certain ease. Like for me, the reverse trip, when I go back and I land at Gatwick and it's full of people who don't look like me, there's a sinking in my body. There's a like, here we go again. Let's put the jacket on, get prepared for whatever looks I'm going to get. And I was born there and I still feel it decades later. And I think there is that sort of lightness of being surrounded by very African people in Grenada. We're not that mixed at all. Like it's beautiful. It energizes me. It's awesome. But that doesn't mean that there aren't challenges and perhaps in some ways, as a woman, the sort of patriarchal element, in some ways you're subjected to that more in Grenada. I can't speak for the whole Caribbean, but you're subjected to that more in Grenada than you would be necessarily in the UK. But I guess you pick your battles. You pick your battles. And it's also realizing that, okay, I can't just judge it by my British standards because I'm not in Britain, I'm in Grenada. So
that's right.
Either I adapt or I spend all my time moaning and complaining, which seems like a waste of time.
Kevoy, you're on mute. We can't hear you. Okay.
So, I think it's very important that you associate yourself with people who have been there, who have done the same thing that you have done, and the people who have figured it out, the people who have maneuvered through the society and know that, okay, this is what happens when this happens. These people will rob from you. These people, so they need people who they can trust. You understand?
Okay.
And you have to be able to trust somebody. You can't just go and say, oh, you don't trust anybody and you can do it on your own. You cannot.
Right.
I'm not saying you cannot. Let me not say you cannot, because you can. Nothing is impossible. However, it's extremely difficult to maneuver it yourself. So you need people to say, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. This is where you're supposed to go. These types of things. I know a community of Jamaicans here who have figured it out, who are living, they're living grand lives, if you ask me. So, the office I'm in right now is owned by a Jamaican. So
okay.
Yeah. So it's important that you associate yourself with those types of people.
Yes. So no matter what you do, there you always need a village of supporters, and a village that will welcome you and be there with you and help you to navigate, regardless of where you are.
Funny. I'll tell you a story. There's a guy who's been here for like 25 years, and he's not wealthy. He doesn't care. The thing is, he just wanted to live in Africa. He just wanted to stay in Ghana. He just wanted to be amongst black people. He decided, okay, he's going to come. He's a Jamaican, and he came in the 90s. And he decided he wanted to go back to Jamaica, and he lives the same type of lifestyle he lived in Jamaica here. He has kids here, he has everything here. Everything is here for him, and he just doesn't want to go back to Jamaica.
Right. Got it. Of course, I have questions and things that I wanted to ask, but I'm going to shift even my approach and ask you, as you entered this conversation, what were you hoping to talk about? Like, what's that thing, what's that thought that you have, or that feeling that you have that you wanted the audience to hear from you, and you were hoping that I took the conversation in that direction? You take it there. Zoe, where do you want to go?
What was I hoping to talk about? I think just to open people's minds up, particularly those of you who are in places where it's very cold, and the cold and the dark is making you think, okay, like, why am I here? Do I need to be here? Is moving to the Caribbean or to the African continent too much for me? It can be done. Like, I'm a single mum. I'm a single mum with 3 young kids. If I can do it, anyone can. You might not be able to do it right away, but I think where there's a will, there's a way. And I think also in this era that we're in now, where like what Kevoy was talking about of building your community. Like when I moved to Italy in 2004, that was before Facebook, before Instagram, before YouTube. Like I went and I had to figure my own way out in an entirely different language. Now there are like so many ways that you can connect with people on social media so that you can start building that network before you even get there. You can ask the key questions that you want to have answered before you go, so you can start putting a really solid plan together. And then on top of that, quite often people will say to me, like, how do I find a job in the Caribbean?
Yes.
How do I find a job in Grenada? And I think that's probably a question that 40% of young people here are asking themselves, because there's 40% unemployment. So the idea that you're going to like rock up to a country and be handed a job just because you got a degree from X or Y university probably doesn't always work. So one of the things that I really encourage people to do is to think entrepreneurially. Is that a word? I don't know. I just made it a word. But to think about how you can create your own revenue, how you can start a business, one that's going to benefit you, but also that's going to benefit the communities that you're in. And also there's the option of working remotely. So I'm based in Grenada. I work for a company that's in the UK. I'm a consultant for them. I also do my stuff on the side. And so I'm able to earn in pounds and live in Grenada. Like, it's far from a life of luxury, but it's a lot better than if I was earning in EC. So I think once you're committed to making the move, you can find ways to make it happen. You can find ways to make it happen. I think that doubt that people have, and all of the things that you raised beforehand, I think those are valid concerns, but I don't think any one of them is big enough to justify staying somewhere where you're not happy, where you're not thriving. I think pretty much all of us come from generations of people who had no option on moving. You were born on that plantation, you stayed on that plantation until you got sold. That's not us. You might have a minimum wage job, you might be unhappy, but you still have options. And if that desire is in you to be elsewhere, try it. Like, if it goes badly, you can go back to doing an awful job that you hate. Like, you've done it once, you can do it again. I just think in this lifetime, it's so worth just striving for something that you feel matters. And if there's no such thing as a mistake, it's just a learning opportunity. And from the looks of Kevoy, he's doing exceptionally well in Ghana. I'm doing pretty well in Grenada. And yeah, I'd encourage folks to just explore that itch, scratch that itch.
Yes. I'm wondering about, thank you, Zoe. I'm wondering about accountability, right? And how you go about holding space for yourself as well as people around you. I mean, obviously there are people who are observing you, they're depending on you, right? How do you hold yourself accountable, again, to yourself as well as those around you? I hear folks say, oh, when folks move to other locations, there's a question of whether or not they do research about where they're going, the spaces that they're entering, because the people who are there may feel a kind of way about you coming, right? I'm here in New York, and there are neighborhoods, right? The neighborhood that I grew up in, where I see a whole bunch of folks who are not from there, right? And they're there. And sometimes I feel a kind of way about it. I appreciate them, and I enjoy seeing them love my space as much as I do. But there are also times when you feel a sense of ownership about your space and the fact that you have no say in who came into it, right? So how do you hold yourself accountable, again, to yourself as well as those around you, the folks who were in that space before you entered it?
That's a beautiful question. I love that. Kevoy, do you want to jump in or shall I? You're on mute, so I'll jump in. I think it's so. Oh, go. Yeah.
Go ahead, Kevoy. Yes.
No, I was saying, no, go ahead. I was saying, go ahead.
Okay. I think it's even to have that question in your mind at the outset. I think that's a step that many people don't take. I see no judgment intended, but I see many pictures of African Americans who've moved to Mexico and have basically just set up little enclaves in Mexico where it's not really clear, like, the interaction with the locals, understanding the privilege that they have in terms of class and economics with regards to those that they're interacting with. And I think probably British people are probably the worst for that, especially in the Caribbean, coming in with the mentality, we know better, you should do things our way, don't you know who we are? And I think maybe because I studied development from a quite a left-leaning angle, I'm very conscious of that. But I slip into it as well. Like, I came here with, this is what I want to achieve. But actually getting here, understanding that actually I just need to lean back and listen. And it's not so much about what I want to impose as to what's actually needed. And understanding, especially as someone from a so-called developed country, that there's actually a lot of decolonizing that I need to do of my own mind before I'm even ready to interact with people, is something that it's a process, but it's one that I constantly reflect on. And also, Grenadians are very good at putting me in my place. They're very good at being like, you're not from here. What passports do you have? Hey, English, all that stuff. For me, what can I say? What can I say? That in some ways they're right, but I think my intention is good. It's not just about gain, it's about an exchange. Like, I'm benefiting from being in this beautiful place. I definitely want to give back. And I think being aware that having a certain education, just my accent will get me access to places that people born and bred here don't have. And that's not because I'm any more deserving. People just make assumptions because of how I sound. And I think understanding that happens gives me a responsibility to use that access for something other than just personal gain. And humility. I think that will get you very far.
Thank you so much. There's so many things that you just said that I would like to even unpack more. When you talk about language, privilege, responsibility, leaning back, and just giving homage to those who are there, as well as just kind of self-reflecting about the exchange and the connection. It's just wonderful. Thank you for your response. So, Kevoy, what about you?
Yes. Oh, let me answer that question. Let me answer that question. I'd love to. So yeah, I love what she said. Even about the blacks who moved to Mexico and the rest of the part. But the thing is, a lot of people think that you come to Africa, and a lot of people, because of the imagery that we saw of Africa, we always think, oh, we're coming to save Africa, and there's so much we can give, and whatever it is, but or there's so much Africa can give us. But
Kevoy, can I ask you to lean in a little bit more, because I want to make sure that we hear you clearly. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah. So what people should do is just come to Africa to live. If you want to come to Africa, just come to Africa to live. And that can mean whatever it is that you want it to mean. If you want to be a billionaire, you strive to be a billionaire. If you just want to come and live in the village, you can go and live in the village. If you want to live a simple life, you can live a simple life off the grid. It doesn't matter. Just come. Just the thing is, at the end of the day, and this goes into the question that you asked before. At the end of the day, I think Black people, we've suffered enough, and I think nowadays it's because of our doing. So until we decide that, okay, let's come together, no matter what our problems are. We might have problems, and we have a lot. However, we can solve these problems ourselves, and then we can gain the respect that we need to gain in this world or in this land. But until nobody wants to come to Africa, and the thing is, if it is that there are some people who wants to come to Africa, who wants to move to a place where there's more Black people than there is white people, and there are some. The problem, I find that the problem is that we always try to save everybody, and we can't do that because not everybody wants to be saved. So the ones who are going to be left behind, let's just leave them behind. Let's leave them behind. Yeah, it's true. let's just leave them behind and then leave and come to where we know in ourselves, we are conscious and we are saying, okay, it is incumbent upon us to move and find something different for our future. And these people are saying, no, me want party. No, it can't work like that. It can't work like that. So we leave those people where they are. Whenever there is no uproar about the whole people are killing black, we don't look, because we say, hey, listen, your problem is your problem now. We've already found a solution. Yeah, we've already found a solution. And until we get there, a lot of black people won't recognize that they need to be amongst their own people to sort out their issues before we can be anything in this world.
Yes. And so so how do you handle the accountability piece while you're there? Like, what is that? Like, yes. How do you approach it? What does that mean to you?
In terms of,
I guess maybe your accountability to the folks who are there, who you met there, who were already there.
Pardon?
Your accountability to the people who were already there, that you met there, who were already living there, the current residents.
You mean like I pay a lot of homage to the people who live here. You know, I respect their language. As a matter of fact, on my social media, there's a lot of me, you know, trying to get their language, trying to teach their language. You know, so, you know, a lot of people in Jamaica now are saying, oh, we didn't know that these people spoke Tree or whatever the language is. But yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's just, I came here with love in my heart. And I decided to love my people, whatever it is that they have, whatever it is that they are. Because then, you know, if I wasn't taken as a slave, this is what I would have been anyway. So, you know, for me, it's just, you know, I give them my love, and to be honest with you, they love me right back. They love me in this place.
Nice. I know earlier you both mentioned children. So can you talk a little bit about how your shift impacts your children, or what role your children play in the shift in your space?
Yeah, I'll talk about my kids, but I just wanted to echo one of the points that Kevoy mentioned about people being in different camps. I remember I watched it quite late, but the Harriet Tubman movie, there's a point where she goes back to the plantation and tries to free her sister, and her sister's like, no, I don't want to leave. And the fact is that some of our friends and family don't want to leave. They're too scared. They're too plugged into the system, and that's them. Like, that's what works for them. But I don't think, as you say, like, we can't stay. Like, please leave, please escape. There's a place where you're not in shackles. Like, if they don't get it, perhaps the next generation will, when they see more people like us who have shown that it can be done. Then it's incumbent upon us to be the first or the second generation that shows that it can be done.
The thing is, those are the ones that will kill you. For trying to save them. Yeah, those are the ones that kill you for trying to save them. Those are the ones that kill you.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you just have to accept that people don't get it. Like, my dad doesn't get it. My grandmother, who was born in Grenada, doesn't get it. She's like, why would you leave a nice office job and go to Grenada and work the land? And my dad is like, but they don't have museums in Grenada. But I'm like, but they don't have like the racism and the stop and search and the death rates and like all the other awful stuff that Black men experience in the UK. But yet somehow we're supposed to forget about that and just be happy with a nice job or a nice pair of shoes. That doesn't work for me. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah. So what role did they, just going along with what you just mentioned, the points that you both just mentioned, what role did they play in your decision? Did you make the decision and then kind of bring them together and say, okay, I have something to tell you? Or were they involved earlier? You know, at what point were whether your friends or your family or your children involved in your decision?
I decided I was going to go and then told my dad.
Okay.
He wasn't involved. He's very oppositional to it. And I think if I involved him in the conversation, it would have just been a drag. So, but my children were sort of, they were in two minds about moving to Grenada. There's parts of it they love. There's parts of it that they absolutely hate. And they have absolutely no qualms about telling me, like, I hate Grenada. I want to go back to England. I miss Amazon Prime. There's no Lego store. Like all this consumerist dumb stuff. So I listen to them. I hear, and for me as a kid, I didn't like Grenada either. But I think I understand what the bigger picture is. And I'm like, what you learn from just being able to suck it up, to be able to interact with kids who perhaps don't understand what you're saying initially. But my son, he can now, like in 4 months, he can switch between a Grenadian accent and an English accent. I can't even do that. I'm stuck with this damn accent. So it's like teaching your kids resilience, I think, is really important. And I imagine Kevoy, like in Ghana, that's even more, like even a richer experience, no?
Yeah. So Kevoy, what about you? What role did they play? When did you involve them?
I don't think anybody was involved until I decided to move. When I came here the first time and I really liked the place, I really, really sat down and I thought about it for maybe about 6 months. And then I came to visit for 1 more month just to see if I really liked the place. And then after that 1 month, when I really liked the place, I texted my family and I told them, hey, guys, bye.
This is it.
but my kids played a vital role in the sense that in 2018 I walked away from corporate. You know, I had a conversation with one of my friends and she said to me, I was saying to her, you know, I don't want to leave the work because I don't want to leave the job because, you know, I have kids, and she said, she looked at me and she said to me, it's very profound. I'll never forget. We were coming from one of our friends' wedding. And she said to me, don't let your reason be your excuse. And I say, you know what? I am finished with corporate. And I left corporate. And since then, I have been striving to provide for those boys. You know, right now they're 6 and 4. And, you know, yeah, so we talk a lot. You know, they always want to come to Africa, but not yet. Not yet. But for me, I want them to be here with me as well. I want to grow my boys. I want to grow them here. I want them to experience Africa, and I want to have more children in Africa. So, you know, my family didn't have much bearings on my decision because I'm just a get up and do it kind of guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I know our conversation is going to end soon. Just wondering if there's anything else you wanted to add, because I was actually going to ask you a little bit about music, culture, food, and if there's any points in that realm. If not, anything else that you want to add, or even ask of our audience, even though we can't hear their answer.
You want to go first, Zoe?
I think one of the things I'm realizing is that I need to learn how to grow my own food. It doesn't make sense me complaining about not having the fruit and veg that I want in the supermarket or how expensive it is. Like, I think one of the, I don't know what it's like in Ghana or whereabouts you are in Ghana, but access to rich, fertile land, like it's very easy to grow stuff. And that's like the next phase of the adjustment that I need to make. And yeah, I think just perhaps, yeah, this is just my personal thing, but sometimes you kind of move and you like dip one toe in and actually just need to dive in and understand what does fully diving into an alternative culture or an additional culture look like, and being just open to that process, letting go of like all the things that you need or that you think you need to be secure, and actually just immersing yourself so that you really can get as much as possible from the experience. That's one of the things that I'm sort of working through at the moment. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
For me, the culture is rich. The culture is, you know, the people here are very ceremonial. They have a lot of festivals still. You know, they worship their ancestors still. So when you come, you just have to, as Zoe said, just immerse yourself into the culture. Just come with love, show the people love, and understand that this is what they've been doing forever and ever. Amen. And what you have or what you came with, they're not going to change for you. Like 30 million people in Ghana is not going to change because you are now, you've arrived. No, nobody cares. So you
Yes.
better adjust to the 30 million. You understand? But I mean, food is an abundance of food, organic food. Organic food. Even street food is yams and you know, potatoes and these types of things. You know, fruits is everywhere. Listen, it's wonderful here. I can tell you that.
It's an abundance. I mean, the message, a part of the message that I'm hearing from both of you is that there is an abundance, right?
Yes.
There's a richness in your experience, right? Whether it's abundance of food or abundance of culture or abundance of love. It's just there's a richness in the journey that you've taken. We still have a few more minutes. I still have a whole bunch of questions sitting here on this screen that I'm looking down at. But I definitely wanted to make sure that we have a very organic discussion. So just, I guess, one more time, if there's anything else you want to add. Yes, go ahead.
I have a challenge.
Yes.
How many great black men have made it unscathed in America? Without soil to their name, without anybody saying, oh, they did this or something happened or they died young. How many great black men have made it have lived a full life in America? I don't know how many.
Yeah, thank you. Zoe?
Pardon?
No, just asking Zoe if there was anything that she wanted to leave us with or end with.
I think just be honest with yourself. If you have questions, explore them. Start doing the research, start speaking, as Kevoy says, to other people who've done it and figure out if it's an option. Just because you figure it is an option doesn't mean you have to move the next month or the next year. I think exploring, like for me, honestly, the process of moving to Grenada took about 10 years.
Wow.
About 10 years from having the idea, then stopping having children, then getting to the position in my career that I could do it. And in between, I was probably coming for like, say, 3 months of the year. So I was slowly repositioning my life to be able to do it. But like, if you don't have kids, it's pretty easy.
Right.
So in a way, the biggest hurdle is you. You're the biggest hurdle. Like if you're willing to allow yourself to get in the way of achieving your dreams, be honest about that. And if you realize that that's what you're doing, start unpicking that so you can be somewhere where you can thrive and in a community, in a nation that will really benefit from your brilliance, I would say.
Thank you. I like that. So again, Kevoy, you mentioned, don't let your reason be your excuse, right? And we definitely have to self-reflect. I think you both said that in just questioning yourself, asking yourself the questions, and taking as long as you need to take, but at the same time, making steps so that there's progress towards that move and that shift, right? And being kind to yourself, as well as being kind to those that you will meet in that new place. So as you're doing your research and even as you're unpacking your bags, right, that you welcome whatever the universe is bringing in that space, whether it's the former space or the new one that you're moving to. It has been such a pleasure chatting with both of you. And I know our conversation is not going to end here. I know we're going to talk a little bit more because I'm going to reach out to you. As well as I think this conversation will live on because hundreds of people will hear it and it will cause them to start thinking and asking the questions that you asked of me and that I asked of you. So thank you so much. I see that Michael Pierre asked a question in the group. He asked, what is one thing that one can do in the present time to ensure the preservation of the African culture within the Caribbean, especially since there is mass communication and infiltration of Western influence? So what's one thing that we can do right now to preserve African culture within the Caribbean?
Are we all answering?
We can exchange cultures. Huh? We can exchange cultures. So one of the things I really want to do is bring West Africans to the Caribbean on vacations, on tours, on these things. So once we start matching it together, and we start to say, oh, we bring Ghanaians to Jamaica and they go to a compound and they see this practice and they say, oh, this is what they do in this thing, and so it keeps it fresh. So So now the younger generation has knowledge of it, and the younger generation, we keep piling it on until we can trade between Africa and the Caribbean. Like, I mean, we don't need to go through Europe. I mean, it takes me so many hours to get to Africa from Jamaica.
Right. So, I mean,
If we
basically,
can
we
just
don't have
bring
to
the two
rely on
together
the
like
media.
this,
Yes.
just bring the two together like this, and
Yes.
then we solve the problem.
Yeah. I mean, basically, we wouldn't rely on the media, right? I think a lot of times we look at the media and we expect, we're trying to hold them to a standard that is difficult to hold them to. Not that we shouldn't attempt to, but then, as you mentioned, Kevoy, we could bring people together, right? And in bringing people together, we can dispel some of the, I guess, inaccurate information that may be. So letting people talk to each other, right? Which is the more organic way for it to happen. So Zoe, what do you think? What are some of the things that we can do in the present to preserve the African culture within the Caribbean?
Yeah, I love that question. I think for me, I'm a journalist, so storytelling is something that I'm hugely passionate about. So really finding ways to reach out to the older generation so that we can document their experiences, their narratives, whether it's the herbs that they use or their traditions or their rituals when it comes to birth and death and marriage, so that we, for ourselves, begin to tell our own stories and have respect for that narrative and find ways to integrate that in our lives, because there's so much that gets lost just because we don't talk about it. And I think rather than waiting for the mainstream media to do it, let's find ways to as Kevoy says, to connect, but also to raise that narrative about the brilliance that exists.
Thank you. And thank you to Michael in the audience who asked that question. One of the things that came up that even caused us to have this conversation is, the fact that sometimes people feel disconnected, right, from that place of origin. And for some people, they will acknowledge that place of origin is Africa, Kevoy, and some folks will see that place of origin as a place in the Caribbean, right? So for me, I live in New York. Most of my family is from Trinidad and Tobago. I have some family from Barbados, right? And so for me, I travel to Trinidad. I travel to Barbados. Why? Because when I'm there, I feel a greater sense of connection because I know that their feet walked on that land, right? And so just being in that space kind of rejuvenates me. It reconnects me. Am I in a place where I want to move to those places? Not just yet, right? But it is something that I think about because I can imagine that I will benefit even mentally, health-wise, from that connection, right? So do you want to say anything about connection or reconnection as a part of your shift? Any comments in that regard?
For me, as a city dweller, getting out of a city was essential. Like, I need nature connectedness, not just in terms of health, but spiritually. Spiritually, I need to be somewhere, as you say, where your ancestors have trod, the land that they've worked, the places where they're buried. To reintroduce or repractice the traditions and the rituals that they had in a place where nature is just so abundant, where it's so lush and so green. So yeah, for me, all of the reasons I spoke beforehand, but in terms of me sort of elevating how I move through the world, being in a really nature-rich location was essential for me, and it makes such a difference, such a huge difference. Even just kind of on an energy level, being surrounded by the vibration of green and blue instead of gray concrete and gray skies, like, it has an impact. It definitely has an impact. So yeah, whenever it happens, even if it just happens every 2 weeks, once a year for your vacation, like, it's worth tapping into these places, whether it's in the Caribbean or on the African continent. I think you'll be surprised by the difference it makes.
Absolutely. Kevoy?
Yeah, well, for me, it was when I came to Ghana, I realized that I have a connection to this place. I really love this place. I don't know what it is that, because to be honest with you, before I came to Ghana, I wasn't thinking about Ghana. And as soon as I came here and I saw how people were living, I saw the people. The people look just like me. I am not kidding. nobody even thinks I'm Jamaican for 1 second. So the only way people know I'm Jamaican is if I open my mouth. That's it. But people usually think I belong to a tribe. People here, they think I am a part of them. So for me, when I felt that when I came here, I was like, hey guys, I'm coming, all right. I'm coming to stay.
No, this has just been such a wonderful conversation. For us, for the festival, the 3 pillars of Black consciousness is pride, power, and practice. And I believe that definitely showed up in this discussion in terms of pride, in where you're from, pride in who you are as a person, the power that you demonstrated in making that shift and making the moves that you made, and the practice, just your daily living and how you're interacting with those who are in the new place where you're residing, is just awesome. So thank you for sharing your story and for being with us today. I have so much more that I want to say, but I know we are time limited, so I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Really nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Look forward to bumping into you in Ghana.
Yes.
Yeah, come on, come.
We'll be there.
Thank you for joining us for this conversation at the Black Consciousness Festival. All of our sessions are available on our website, theblackconsciousnessfestival.com, and on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. All of our conversations are intense, fun, enriching, and may also be challenging as we explore different facets of our history as people of African descent. Remember, you can find more on the festival on our website, theblackconsciousnessfestival.com. Have a good night, good evening, good afternoon, and a good morning, wherever you are joining us from. And remember to walk in pride, power, and practice. Thank you.